The remotely operated vehicle descended slowly through the black water of the Pacific, its lights cutting a narrow tunnel through suspended particles that drifted like snow. At nearly 2,000 meters, the pilot adjusted the camera toward a pale shape moving just beyond the beam. What appeared on the monitor was unmistakable, a squid, but one far larger than the researchers expected to find at that depth, and still descending. Footage like this has become increasingly common over the past 2 decades. Oceanographic surveys conducted by institutions in Japan, the United States, and New Zealand have documented multiple encounters with unusually large deep-water cephalopods, some observed at depths exceeding those where most shallow-water relatives could survive. The pattern is not universal, but it appears often enough to provoke a question that refuses to disappear. Why do certain squids grow larger, sometimes dramatically larger, as they inhabit deeper parts of the ocean? The idea challenges a basic assumption in marine biology, that scarcity of food and extreme pressure should limit body size rather than encourage it. Yet several species appear to contradict that expectation, suggesting that something in the deep ocean alters the rules we think we understand. This question matters now for a practical reason as well. Advances in deep-sea exploration have expanded observation far beyond what trawling nets once revealed. High-definition cameras, pressure-resistant sensors, and long-duration dives are beginning to show behaviors and anatomical features that were invisible to earlier generations of researchers. Each new descent seems to complicate the picture rather than clarify it. To understand why squids may become monstrous in the deep, it helps to begin not with speculation, but with the earliest credible records, the first traces that suggested these animals were not merely larger by accident, but part of a pattern waiting to be recognized. Long before modern submersibles existed, sailors and naturalists occasionally recorded encounters with unusually large squid washed ashore or recovered in fishing gear. In 1873, fishermen in Newfoundland reported a massive cephalopod tangled in their nets, an event later examined by zoologist Moses Harvey, who preserved portions of the specimen. Measurements suggested an animal far larger than any squid commonly described at the time, raising early doubts about how large these creatures could grow. These reports were often treated with caution, partly because many specimens were incomplete or damaged by nets and scavengers. Yet over the late 19th and early 20th centuries, similar accounts emerged from Norway, Japan, and the South Atlantic. When scientists compared preserved beaks, one of the most durable structures in squid anatomy, they found sizes implying bodies far larger than the fragments recovered, hinting at animals living beyond ordinary observation. A clearer line of evidence began to form in the mid-20th century, when deep trawling operations occasionally retrieved parts of enormous squid from depths exceeding 1,000 meters. Although nets rarely brought up intact animals, recovered arms, eyes, and beaks indicated individuals of extraordinary proportions. Some eyes measured more than 25 centimeters across, larger than a dinner plate, suggesting adaptations to an environment where light is nearly absent. By the early 2000s, the first confirmed photographs of giant squids in their natural habitat were obtained using baited camera systems deployed off Japan. These images showed animals approaching from darkness with long feeding tentacles extended, moving with controlled, deliberate motion. The observations confirmed that at least some large squid were active hunters at depths where pressure exceeds 100 times that at the surface. Subsequent expeditions expanded this evidence. In Antarctic waters, researchers documented the colossal squid, a species even heavier than the giant squid, with shorter but thicker arms and rotating hooks along its tentacles. Specimens recovered from the stomachs of sperm whales and from fishing operations suggested that these animals inhabit cold, deep regions where few large predators besides whales operate regularly. As more data accumulated, a tentative pattern began to emerge. Larger squid species were consistently associated with deeper or colder waters, while smaller relatives dominated coastal and shallow environments. The relationship was not perfectly linear, but the trend appeared often enough to suggest that depth itself might play a role in shaping body size. This raised a biological question that could not be ignored. If deeper water contains less food, lower temperatures, and immense pressure, conditions that typically constrain growth, what mechanism could allow or even encourage squids to reach such extraordinary size in the first place? From a physiological standpoint, growing large in the deep ocean presents immediate challenges. Squids are active animals that rely on jet propulsion, a mode of movement that demands energy and efficient oxygen exchange. In cold, oxygen-poor water, sustaining a large muscular body should be metabolically expensive. For many marine species, size is limited precisely because these constraints become harder to overcome as the body grows. Pressure introduces another complication. At depths of 2,000 meters, pressure exceeds 200 atmospheres, enough to compress air-filled spaces and alter the behavior of proteins and cell membranes. Most shallow water organisms cannot survive such conditions without specialized biochemical adaptations. The question arises whether squid physiology, built around soft tissues and rapid movement, should tolerate such pressures at all. Temperature also plays a role. Deep ocean water in many regions remains only a few degrees above freezing. Low temperatures slow metabolic reactions, reducing both energy use and growth rates. In theory, this should produce smaller animals, not larger ones. Yet certain deep-sea squids appear to follow the opposite trend, a contradiction that suggests some factor may be counteracting the expected limits. One proposed explanation involves buoyancy. Unlike fish, squids do not possess gas-filled swim bladders that would collapse under pressure. Instead, many species regulate buoyancy through chemical composition in their tissues, using compounds such as ammonium ions that are less dense than seawater. This may reduce the energetic cost of remaining suspended, potentially allowing larger bodies to exist without proportionally higher energy demands. Another factor may lie in growth patterns. Some deep-sea organisms exhibit slower but prolonged growth, reaching large sizes over extended lifespans rather than through rapid development. However, the life cycles of many large squids remain poorly documented. Without knowing how long these animals live or how quickly they grow, it is difficult to determine whether their size results from longevity, accelerated growth during certain phases, or a combination of both. Oxygen availability complicates the picture further. While some deep regions are low in oxygen, others contain cold, oxygen-rich water descending from polar regions. In such environments, metabolic efficiency may improve, allowing large tissues to function with less strain than in warmer, oxygen-poor zones. This possibility suggests that depth alone may not be the determining factor, but rather specific water masses and circulation patterns. Vision may also impose selective pressure on size. In near-total darkness, large eyes can detect faint light and bioluminescent signals at greater distances. The enormous eyes of giant and colossal squids may represent an adaptation to detecting predators such as sperm whales or locating prey that emits weak light. If larger eyes improve survival, natural selection might indirectly favor larger bodies capable of supporting them. Yet none of these explanations alone fully accounts for the repeated appearance of unusually large squid in deep environments. Each mechanism offers part of the answer, but gaps remain. To understand how these animals may overcome biological limits, it becomes necessary to examine the environment itself, the physical and ecological conditions of the deep ocean that might reshape the rules of growth. The deep ocean is often imagined as empty, but in reality, it is structured by layers, currents, and gradients that shape life in subtle ways. Temperature drops sharply below the thermocline, pressure rises steadily, and sunlight disappears entirely within the first few hundred meters. For organisms adapted to this world, survival depends less on speed or aggression and more on efficiency, patience, and the ability to exploit rare opportunities. One environmental factor that may influence size is temperature itself. In cold water, metabolic rates slow, meaning organisms burn energy more gradually. This can extend lifespan in some species, allowing individuals to continue growing over longer periods. If a squid can survive predation and find sufficient food, slow but persistent growth may eventually produce a body far larger than that of fast-growing coastal relatives. Food availability in the deep sea is uneven, but not absent. Much of it arrives as marine snow, a continuous drift of organic material sinking from surface waters. Larger carcasses, including whales, can also create temporary ecosystems that sustain scavengers and predators for years. Squids capable of traveling long distances and exploiting these scattered resources may benefit from larger bodies that store energy more effectively between meals. Predation pressure also changes with depth. In shallow waters, countless predators hunt visually, forcing squid to remain agile and relatively small to maneuver quickly. In deeper zones, fewer large predators operate regularly, and encounters may be less frequent. This reduced predation pressure could allow slower growth strategies to succeed, making size less of a liability than it would be near the surface. Darkness itself reshapes sensory priorities. In an environment where vision is limited, detecting movement, vibration, or faint bioluminescence becomes critical. Larger bodies can support larger sensory organs, including the massive eyes observed in giant squid, which may detect the silhouette of a sperm whale from tens of meters away in dim light. Such advantages could shift the balance toward increased size over evolutionary time. Pressure, while extreme, may also stabilize the environment. Unlike surface waters, which experience storms, waves, and rapid temperature changes, the deep sea is comparatively constant. This stability may favor organisms that grow slowly and invest in long-term survival rather than rapid reproduction. A stable environment does not guarantee large size, but it removes certain constraints that would otherwise limit it. There is also the question of buoyancy and locomotion. Many deep-sea squids appear less muscular than their shallow water relatives, with softer tissues and reduced density that allow them to drift or glide with minimal effort. A larger body in such conditions may not require proportionally greater energy to maintain position, altering the usual relationship between size and metabolic cost. Yet even with these environmental factors considered, researchers continue to observe something unexpected. Some deep-sea squids do not merely grow large, they display proportions, growth rates, and distribution patterns that seem inconsistent even with these explanations, suggesting that another layer of the mystery remains unresolved. As deep-sea exploration expanded in the early 21st century, remotely operated vehicles began recording encounters that were once thought nearly impossible. Squids of considerable size appeared not only in isolated regions, but in multiple oceans, from the North Pacific to Antarctic waters. The distribution suggested that large body size in deep living squids was not a rare accident, but part of a recurring biological pattern that demanded closer attention. Some of the most revealing observations came from long-duration camera systems placed on the seafloor. These stationary instruments occasionally captured large squids passing slowly through the frame, often moving with minimal effort, tentacles extended as if conserving energy. The animals did not appear frantic or stressed by the environment, which raised the possibility that the deep sea was not as physiologically hostile to them as previously assumed. Comparative studies of different squid species added another layer to the puzzle. Smaller species inhabiting mid-water zones often showed faster metabolisms and shorter lifespans, while larger, deep-dwelling species appeared to grow more slowly and possibly live longer. This contrast suggested that the relationship between metabolism, growth, and environment might differ significantly from what is observed in coastal ecosystems. One particularly intriguing pattern involves eye size. The giant squid and colossal squid possess the largest eyes known in the animal kingdom, exceeding 25 centimeters in diameter. Optical models suggest that eyes of this scale are especially effective at detecting large moving objects in dim water, such as approaching predators. If this interpretation is correct, it implies that size itself may be part of a sensory strategy rather than merely a byproduct of growth. Another observation concerns body composition. Analyses of recovered specimens indicate that many large deep-sea squids have tissues with relatively low density and high water content. This structure may reduce energy costs associated with buoyancy and movement, allowing large bodies to function in ways that would be impractical for more muscular animals. Even so, the precise balance between tissue structure and performance remains poorly understood. Encounters with sperm whales provide indirect evidence of squid distribution and size. Examination of whale stomach contents has revealed beaks from multiple large squid species, sometimes in numbers, suggesting that these animals may be more abundant than direct observation implies. If large squids are relatively common in certain depths, it raises the question of how entire populations can remain so rarely seen. There is also the matter of growth limits. Some captured specimens appear not fully grown, implying that individuals larger than any recorded example may exist in deeper or less accessible regions. Because most observations occur at depths reachable by current equipment, a significant portion of the habitat where these animals live may still lie beyond systematic study. Taken together, these observations form a pattern that is difficult to dismiss, yet equally difficult to explain. Large squids appear repeatedly, across oceans, across depths, and across species, but the underlying drivers of their size remain uncertain, leaving one fundamental question still unresolved. What ultimately determines how large a squid in the deep ocean can become? Despite decades of study, the life cycles of many large deep-sea squids remain largely unknown. Scientists rarely observe mating, egg development, or early juvenile stages in natural conditions, leaving critical gaps in understanding how these animals grow and how long they live. Without this information, it is difficult to determine whether their enormous size results primarily from slow accumulation of mass over time or from developmental phases that have never been directly observed. Another unresolved issue concerns metabolism. Measurements taken from stranded or captured specimens provide only partial insight into how these animals function under natural pressure and temperature. Laboratory conditions cannot fully replicate the deep ocean, and instruments capable of long-term physiological monitoring at great depth are still limited. As a result, estimates of energy use, growth rates, and feeding frequency remain provisional rather than definitive. There is also uncertainty about population size and distribution. Large squids appear rarely in direct observation, yet indirect evidence from predator diets suggests they may be far more common than footage alone indicates. This contrast between what is seen and what must exist highlights a broader limitation in deep-sea research, where vast areas remain unexplored, and many species are known only from fragments or fleeting encounters. Perhaps the most significant limitation is the environment itself. The deep ocean covers more than half the surface of the planet, yet only a small fraction has been systematically surveyed with modern tools. Entire ecosystems may exist beyond the reach of current exploration, and the largest individuals of known species may inhabit depths rarely visited by cameras, leaving open the possibility that the upper limits of squid size have not yet been observed. In the end, the question of why squids become larger in the deep ocean remains only partially answered. Evidence suggests that cold temperatures, buoyancy strategies, reduced predation, and slow growth may all play a role. Yet none of these factors alone fully accounts for the scale some species appear to reach. Each expedition adds fragments of understanding, but the full picture still lies beyond the light of our instruments. What makes the mystery compelling is not only the size of these animals, but the scale of the world they inhabit. The deep ocean is vast beyond ordinary comprehension, a realm larger than all terrestrial ecosystems combined, where pressure, darkness, and time reshape life in ways that surface biology only begins to grasp. In such a place, it may not be surprising that evolution follows paths that appear improbable from the shore. For now, the largest squids remain inhabitants of a domain where observation is rare and certainty even rarer. Somewhere below the depths most cameras reach, in waters colder and darker than we can easily explore, there may be individuals still unseen, growing slowly in silence, reminding us that the greatest creatures on Earth do not always live where we expect to find them.